Welcome to the 47th edition of Lifestory, brought to you by the Living Memory Association, based at the Wee Museum of Memory in Ocean Terminal, Leith. Today we're joined by Andrew Grant, who at 85 years of age recalls a series of weird and wonderful jobs that he did in Edinburgh in the 1960s. Back in time we go. Andrew Grant, a very warm welcome back to Lifestory. You are, of course, one of our favourite guests. You've been on many times and we always enjoy your stories. You're in here today, really, to tell us about a period in your life during the 1960s when you had a variety of different jobs in Leith and beyond. Can you just kind of tell us the lead up to when you were looking for these jobs?
Yes, it occurred when I was actually at sea. You know, I got married and I had a family, and that's a wee bit of a pull when you're at sea. But there was also pushes because the shipping company was actually, I wouldn't say going into liquidation, but it was in that position because the number of ships they had were less and things like that. And I thought about leaving sea for a while, and it was just an odd remark by my wife again, and I decided I'd try for a teaching post sometime. At the time, it was raising of the school leaving age. Most people would call it as the Rosla period, when they took the school leaving age from 15 to 16, much to the disappointment to some students. But for a lot of people it was an opportunity to get into teaching, because the government actually supported people leaving jobs and getting into, having to qualify for teaching posts and whatever. So with this in mind, I applied to the various authorities about it, and they said, "Oh, you have to get into university and do that." And I said, "But what to get into university? You have to get hires." I said, "Does my master's ticket not mean anything?" And they said, "No." So anyway, for a couple of months I studied more mathematics and English, and I sat the exam and got through, passed. So they took me on to this Rosla scheme. Now from Rosla I had to go back and get more hires. I did that at Napier Technical College, or Napier University is now. And I had to leave sea, but leaving sea meant I had no salary, no money coming in, so I had to take whatever jobs came up. And the first one, when I left sea, between getting my hires, the ones that I'd actually added to, and getting to university at about 6 months, which would have been with no income at all. But anyway, I decided we'd do something, and a post came up for a job at the Royal Infirmary. And I thought, oh, well, all right, I've done quite a bit in medical stuff when I was at sea. I'll apply for that. So I eventually got a job in the Royal Infirmary in Edinburgh, the old Royal Infirmary up at Lawrison Place. Yeah. And they put me down as an orderly. Right. For various reasons I was put on night duty as well. So I had 6 months actually, and it was very, very enjoyable in some respects. But I was attached basically to 2 wards, Ward 3, where people with learning difficulties and whatever were often put in, and Ward 20, which is right up at the top of the building where head injuries came in. So it was in these 2 wards, which I found most interesting when I was there. A lot of things happened, a lot of amusing things, some not so amusing. I liked Ward 20 because that was the people who were up there were in for quite a while, and they got to know me and I got to know them. And there were some very sorry cases there, 1 or 2 caused by car accidents and people going up with head injuries. But one lad I always remember, we got very, very friendly, him and I. He went swimming in the sea up in the north of Scotland somewhere, dived off a rock and hit his head on a rock underneath the sea and broke his neck. So he was actually put on traction put for it, and you had to turn him every so often because he wasn't either facing down or facing up all the time. And we used to chat away, especially at night when it was, quiet. I know I had to do that. So that was one of the characters I remember. Down in Ward 3, you had to try to contain people, if you like, for more than other wards. But I did that for about 6 months, and mostly on night duty. So that was that. And then,
where are you living in Edinburgh at this point, Andrew?
we were staying in the Bonington area. My wife and I, we had a flat there, and I had a son there at the time too. He was about 4 when I left sea. So it was one of the remarks that kept made, sticks in my mind actually, when I was at sea. Was one of my nieces was with her mother one day, and she kept saying, "Who's that man with Auntie Molly?" Molly being my wife's name. They didn't recognise me. And I thought, that's what life's going to be like if I stay at sea. But anyway, that was one of the reasons for leaving. But there was others as well, obviously, to have a home life and with my family as well. So, but that 6 months was the first of many jobs. What I've said to many people, I've had a few careers, 3 careers in fact, but a lot of jobs.
And why did you leave the infirmary in then?
Well, then I got into university,
Right.
so you had to study. But one good thing about that, I went along to start and I found out I was doing a degree in geography there, which was very good for being at sea. So I knew more about places than some of the lecturers that we got. And I used to tell them about it. One of them, in fact, one of the professors one day saying, "Do you agree with this, Andrew?" And I said, "Yeah, that's okay," in front of about 200 students. But one of the things I did do while I was there was obviously to try and keep some money coming into the household. I got a job in a pub at Golden Acre. And I stuck at for several years. Usually a Wednesday night and a Friday and Saturday night was when I worked. And again, I got to know local people in the area as I did that too.
What was the name of the pub, Andrew? Do you remember?
Well, I'll keep that quiet. Well, there was only one there actually, Golden Acre. But it was very good, and there was a lot of the local people I got to know as well. Because I've stayed in that area basically all in married life, about 70 years, 60 years now, in that area. And knew some people from that. Another thing we got into is a couple of friends on the opposite side of where we stayed. We got into making home brew, so we had some right riotous parties with our home brew there, and used to collect the brambles down in the railway, which is the railway tracks anyway, and make bramble wine. It was very good, very tasty. But anyway, that was another thing got up to. That wasn't a paid one, but the pub was, and that was I kept there for years.
And was that pub in being quite a well-to-do area then? Was there any trouble? Anything you'd have to
No,
do?
there was nothing like what you seem to get now in some of the pubs. It's crazy. And in fact, the pub, I think, is still going and doesn't seem to have any, what shall I say, outrageous behaviour. And it's being where it is, it's within the shall I say, the rugby fraternity a bit there. So when there was any international matches or things like that, it was always crowded. So it was good. Yeah. But that was another way I got some more money. But anyway, to go on a bit further, after the first term at university, I thought, well, what will I do? And then I've got, because there you get about a month off. It's not like a 2-week thing at the school. And I thought, a month, I must get a job of some sort. And it's just suddenly tried, of course, what happens at that time of the year, the end of the year, the post office. So I just applied to the post office and I became a postie for the month, and it was reading up to Christmas, so it was all the Christmas cards and things like that. But I was attached to the Leith department, post office department, and delivered parcels, so I was taking parcels all the way, and I soon got to know the streets and byways of Leith. Should do that in the jigsaw, by the way.
Did you have any tenements on your round?
There was tenements and stairs, and there was all sorts there. And I got to like that, and I got to know people, particularly in Leith Provident, as it was then, because there was a lot of parcels going into them, and people deposited them there and picked them up, things like that. So for a month I was driving around in not a white van as they call it nowadays, it was a wee red van I had, picking up parcels and delivering them to people there. So that was the first month. And having done that, go on another wee bit longer, go to the Easter holidays, getting to know people in East Provident again. They said, "Oh, we might be able to employ you, sometime." I said, "Oh yeah, well that's all right. I'll keep that in mind for the next holidays or so." And it duly did. But the job I got first of all from them was delivering paraffin to people, because there was a lot of people had paraffin stoves, and I got to the stage where I was a walking incendiary with spilt paraffin. But then one of them said, "Oh, you could come and work in the shop if you want." And I said fine. So I went up and worked in what was to Electra House on the electrical department, which I knew quite a bit about anyway, and selling radiograms and record players and things like that, and also records as well. So that was most enjoyable, because I used to play all the records I wanted on the machines to demonstrate to people.
I suppose that'd be the time when record players were becoming something that people owned in their houses right across the board, isn't it?
Well, it became units of furniture too. They were actually big cabinets and all sorts. So some of them are really a bit nice piece of art, and should have been actually kept for that. It would be useful in here in this place. So anyway, we're selling records and radio machines. This needs to be quite successful at that, selling them. So they said, "Oh, you can come back again," which I did, but not immediately. But thereafter, I kept looking for different jobs and things that would pay a bit more. So, and a couple of lads that were at the university with me said, "Oh, why don't you go into the building sites, or get involved in that?" They said, in fact, there's one they're looking at the moment for people to help out building the motorway, around the bypass now of Edinburgh. So I said, "Oh, that's not for me," I thought. And I said, "Well, I'll give it a bash. So I went out and saw the foreman out there, and they said, "Oh yes, we can you drive?" And I said, "Yes, I can drive. I'd only just got my licence, but I could drive." And he says, "Oh well, fine. Can you start on Monday?" And this was for the summer holidays. This was, going on, jumping on a year. And I said, "Yeah, I'll come down Monday. And what do you want me to do?" So "We'll show you when you come." So it was just at the time when they were starting to lay the tarmac in the road and build up the parts of the bypass. But the section I was allotted to was from New Craig Hall roundabout to Kirkliston. And they said, "You work on that bit there." And I said, "Yeah, what do you want me to do?" He said, "I want you to sweep the roads." And I said, "What? Sweep the road?" They said, "There's your tractor, and there's the brush in the front of the tractor." And you drove along, and this brush burled around and brushed all the loose stone or loose debris it was on to the side of the road. And you went up, and then you turned, and you came back again, and you went up and turned. And that's what I did for about a whole summer. It was great. It was all right when it was fine weather, but when it was raining, it was murder because you were sprayed. So when I go along that section of the road, I say, "This is why." Well, this bit of the road. So that was very good.
Must have felt quite zen, just the up and down and up and down.
Up and down. It was great. But those two of us, there was another guy who was in the university as well, and he went up one side of the road, and I went up the other, or up and down. So we just kept going up and down. And it's funny, we almost just managed to stop 12 o'clock outside the canteen every day. But that was, that was a good job. And on a Sunday afternoon, not Sunday actually, if you went out and worked the Sunday as well, you had to maintain your tractor. So you put new oil and new fuel in it, cleaned it up and whatever, and you got double time. So I went out every Sunday to get the double time, kept Saturdays free. So that was that job. And that was for a whole summer holiday, which was about, I think 10 weeks or something like that.
And are we still in the 60s at this point?
I was still in the 60s, coming the late 60s, but that'd be about 69, I think that was happening, because they were just building the road. And that section was good, so I admire it when I go back and forth along it. I said, "I did a good job, there's no potholes," which is something to say about Edinburgh at the moment. But anyway, that was that job. I then went back again the following year. I'm jumping on years at a time here, and I went back to Leith Provident again, and back to the old job of selling records and whatever there. But come on to another year, I looked for different employment. By the way, I should point out that the road sweeping job was the best paid job of God ever. You know, take it in time of what it was very, very good pay. So I came back, and the next summer I thought, well, am I going back to this site? And they said, oh, and we'll see, but go back. But that was every day driving out there and driving back and whatever. I thought I'll try something more local. So I went down to where they're building the new lock down here in Leith Docks. And Leith Docks, again, saw the engineers that were there. They were looking for people, and they said, oh, would you like to come and work here? So I had a number of jobs there. First, not driving tractors this time. I was helping in the surveying of it, because I had a bit of knowledge about surveying. And then I went on to the concrete gangs, which were very well paid, setting the concrete blocks every day. And that went on for, again, most of the summer, which was great, except for the wet days when you had to stop because you couldn't lay concrete at that time. So we used to just sit in the shed. It reminds me of that song about the song that they sing about the building sites that were sitting on the backside with nothing else to do. Have you heard that one? Oh, well, it's called £4 a day. £4 a day, my lad. There's nothing else to do. It's raining. Anyway, the rain is falling on the site. The tea is on the brew. No trouble from the foreman. He's in the union too.
Before my time, Andrew, I need to look that one up.
It was called £4 a day. You'll get it. But anyway, we did that. Some days it was really pouring with rain. We couldn't do it down there, but we worked there for the summer as well. And again, got to know how the thing was built. And also the other thing, to get some extra money, used to sandblast the metal piles that make the breakwater down against the Leith Dock. So I worked on that. So that was good fun. Another factor about the docks, where they were building the lock gate there, I got to know a lot of the engineers, quite friendly with them in fact, and used to sit and have coffee if we were lucky in the morning with them, and I would tell them that I thought the lock was far too small because ships were increasing in size and it was becoming obvious that some of them might not manage into Leith Docks. They said, oh, no, but of course the traffic in Leith Docks has disappeared, a large amount of it, and the large ships now that bring people to the shores of Leith can't get into the lock. So my forecast was correct, and I wish they'd taken point of that. So anyway, still worked in the winter for the Christmas holidays with the post office. And then the following year, I think and quite a bit in the following year, starting at the Easter holidays, just across from not far from where we stayed, was the Globe Lemonade Factory. And they were looking for drivers. So I applied for that and I got a job with Globe Lemonade.
Did you get any free juice?
Very good. It was free juice at the time. Free whatever it was. So they said, again, can you drive? Yeah. Can you drive a lorry? Yeah, I'll drive a lorry. Because I'll drive anything. So anyway, I went over there, and the first day they said, well, one of the jobs you'll have to do about once a week is to drive down to Biggar, because we deposit a lot of... We've got a depository there for the lemonade for the border area. I said, oh, that's all right, I know the road well. So they put me in this great big 6-ton lorry, loaded up with cases of lemonade. And these were the wooden cases in the past where you had 12 bottles in a case. They weighed a ton, but this was a load. So there was another lad going down with another lorry load as well, because it was coming into summer and they wanted to have a good stock down there. So I said, fine, I'll follow you. You know the road that you take through Edinburgh. So I started this lorry up and it went okay. We got down there, drove down, not in any speed, with this massive load on the back. Got down to this warehouse place down at the other end of the town, offloaded the lemonade that was there and loaded it up again with the old bottles, the empty bottles that were, you got deposits on the bottles in those days. It's great fun. When you were a kid, you used to go and pinch the bottles and take them around and then go back and get them again and do that. But anyway, that's an aside.
Sorry to interrupt, my memories of Globe growing up was quite a wide range of flavours. At that point, was there a wide range of flavours?
Oh, yeah. Well, what we did on these lorry loads is you put certain amounts on of different types. Plain lemonade was one, but the things you got pineapple and orange and red, all different colours.
Limeade was my favourite.
Limeade and all that. And it's what the people that were in charge of it down there would phone up and say, we need more of this or less of that on each of these lorry roads. So anyway, that was due the first trip down, and then the other guy, he went off, we loaded his lorry up, we emptied his first, and he said, well, you can load yours up and then just follow on, the way back. I said, yeah, that's okay, I'll manage it, okay. This massive lorry. Anyway, loaded him up and he went off, and then we duly loaded mine up again and strapped them all down, made them sure they were all secure, and I had 7 to 8, and then I started off back up the road to come back to Bowling Green Street, which is where they made the lemonade and things. I got past Carfrey Mill it was, and here's a police car, and they waved me down, stopped me down, and I thought, oh God, this is the first time I've driven this lorry. It came up, and it was a policeman and an inspector came up and said, we're doing a spot check on vehicles going up the road, especially lorries today, and you just happen to be one. I said, oh, it's okay, what have you done? And they said, can we check the load secure? I said, yeah, I've got the lorry. Went round, we checked that and did various other things with the lorry, checked the tyres and whatever. It was really quite thorough. I mean, they were very good at it. And then they came into the cab, which was littered with Globe labels. So the floor of the cab was littered with Globe labels. And he says, oh, by the way, he says, where's your tax disc? Because in those days you had tax. I said, it's not, don't know where it is. It's not there. He said, you can't drive without a tax disc. This is me, my first journey.
Yeah, oh dear.
And I said, well, I know nothing about that. I said, look, I'm just a student. I'm taking this on as a summer job, and this is my first trip. And the guy, he said, I'll take a bit of sympathy on you, but we'll have to note this as a fault on your vehicle and get back to the guy at who owns the firm. And I said, okay. He said, but just go back, just drive safely, drive cautiously. My heart was going boom, 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 boom all the time, wondering what I was going to be done for something in the first trip. So I got back to the depot and I said, look, they're after you because there's no tax disc on the thing. They want to know if the vehicle's been taxed, and you'll get a letter and a fine. They said they would fine you because it wasn't displayed. And that duly happened, but they had the documentation to show it had been taxed. But we searched through this pile of labels that were all over the floor and couldn't find it there. So God knows what happened to the original, but we got a new one. So after that, I had a regular run up and down there on the lorry, up and down down to the borders, but also during the week. Didn't do it every day, but during the week I went delivered to various depots, and my first one was every morning to go up with a load of the little split bottles, the small bottles, load that up and take it up to Woolworths in Princess Street. That was my first job every morning, 8 o'clock, up there with this van loaded up until another lorry came in to deliver stuff and smacked into the back of the van one day. But anyway, that's an aside. Also during that time, one of the other tasks I had was taking lorry loads of bottles to the bank, the bottle bank. Now the bottle bank, it was at that time on the road running from the Dean Bridge down to the Dean Village, that very steep hill. When the people returned the bottles, it didn't matter which one it was. It could have been Barzan or Henry's or also the ones that I was working with, and would collect all these bottles, separate them out into the various companies, and then have to take them to the bottle bank. That meant driving up to the Dean Bridge, driving down the hill towards the Dean Village, stopping halfway down and reversing the lorry up into a warehouse which is on the riverside of the Dean road going down to the village. That was a very difficult task because the lorry I always had to do that was a double declutching one, which nobody knows much about nowadays, but it was very difficult to manoeuvre. We'd take all the bottles off there, they'd be sorted out, and I'd bring another load back down to the Globe factory where they had been sorted out and into Globe cases. When you consider all the political situation just now about recycling and things, this was just something we were doing, exchanging bottles, delivering them back to the various factories where they were required, and making sure they didn't get dumped. And anyway, people got threepence back in the bottle, so all the kids were making a lot of pocket money by taking bottles back to shops. So that went on for the spring holiday, all the summer. It was great, right through to and did I do it in the winter? No, the winter, I think, no, I didn't do it in the winter months. I did definitely the spring and summer for Globe. And I went back the next year and did another spring session with them. But by that time I had to do, well, as part of the course we were doing at university, you had to do a dissertation, and I did mine on glacial geomorphology up in around about right by the Braemar area, Lochnagar. So the summer I couldn't work that time, but my wife actually managed to get, was working too, so we kept the money coming in, kept the mortgage going and everything, so it was fine. So it was a lot of fun actually, but I got to know a lot of things when I was on doing these summer jobs. But today I don't know what, if students still can get them or not, but you always hear that they're working in pubs, they're working in service, the service sector, working in restaurants. But that was just my experience.
Yeah. Did you get a grant in those days?
Yes. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. There was a grant. It would just keep your head above water, but wouldn't pay the mortgage or things like that. And that's why I had, to do the work as well, to keep the other things going.
Yeah.
But fortunately, the mortgages weren't as high as they are now, fortunately. Yeah. But that still had to be paid, and insurances and things like that. And also just daily upkeep and things. It was an expensive time. But one thing I always remember, I tell people this all the time, when I first went to sea, as an apprentice, I went with Shell, and my salary for the year was £48.12 and 6. Right? Old money. Yeah. Right? When I left sea as first mate, my pay was £48.12 and 6 a month. And when I started teaching, that's what I got as well, £48.12 and 6. I mean, that seemed to follow me around. But that's what I had. What I had for a year I was getting for a month when I started teaching. But that soon changed. Things were snowballing at that time for salaries and prices and mortgages and everything. It was crazy. And it's even as bad now.
And before we let you go, Andrew, looking back to that time, obviously it's known as the swinging 60s. Were you aware that society was changing and that popular music was exploding, and or were you just living through that decade? I mean,
no,
how did it feel?
Well, I mentioned earlier about making home brew and having these parties, and friends, and we had parties around the houses periodically, but it was mostly the folk songs that we went for. You know, it was loads and loads of, and we all sang them. We knew them very well.
Did you go to the folk clubs in Edinburgh?
No, well, that cost money to go to things like that. But we saw people like the Corries and things like that periodic. It was a good time for that. And then, of course, there was all the other type of music coming, rock and roll and things like that. It was very, very. In fact, I was actually dancing that I met my wife at one of the dancing schools that were in Edinburgh. It was when I was at sea, I had no idea about dancing, so I went along, and went from there onwards. So we're still around together, so we must have danced quite well.
Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your memories today, and no doubt we will see you again. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Edwin.
If you have a story to share, please pop in to see us at the Wee Museum of Memory on the second floor of Ocean Terminal in Leith. You can also visit our Facebook page to keep up with our regular events and view our wonderful photo videos and much more on our YouTube channel just by searching for the Living Memory Association. We also have a brilliant website at www.livingmemory.org.uk, hosting over 3,000 photos in conjunction with Edinburgh Collected. If you've enjoyed this podcast, our further reminiscence and music shows Lifestory, Leith Lives, Forgotten Songs from the Broom Cupboard, and Analog Rory's Jukebox can all be accessed from the Projects tab on our website or via Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Until next time, we bid you farewell.